The terrors of tripping on pop.
Be there! Scour the spaceways! Explore vast alien worlds!
This tin right here contains the whole rigmarole.
I used to smoke about an ounce of hash every day.
Good.
And it made me go a little bonkers.
Maybe if I occupy his mind with more duties, I can control his space.
Hi.
Big fat doobies.
Hi.
Hi, hello. How's everybody doing? Today's Saturday, July 11th, 2020, episode 207 of the Hot Box. I'm Matt. That's Grand. How you doing, Grand?
What's up, buddy? How you doing today?
Good, man. Good to be back another week. Hotboxpodcast.com, hotbox.earth. That's the website. Check it out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us on iTunes and Stitcher, all that stuff. Today we have special guest, Murphy Murri. She does some classes. You can find her, I think, on the Future 4200 forums. You kind of answer some questions there sometimes, and then you got your own thing going on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you actually teach classes on this?
Yes.
Like that's rare.
Yeah, before people started social distancing, my big thing was lab classes. And so I'm in my classroom right now. But I would teach people hands-on. You could come in and we would make hash together. It's the only way that I learn efficiently, and I think it's probably one of the best ways to teach. So I love teaching hands-on. Yeah.
That sounds way better than just paying like $100,000 for an SOP and then figuring it out from there.
Right. And the SOP is, only good if you understand it. You got to be able to ask questions. I'm a hands-on learner. I'm a visual learner. And so reading a book is never the same as like being able to talk to someone and like just repeat the idea out loud and make sure I got it right. So it's the way that I love to teach. I think it's effective for most people.
You see a lot of that in the industry that's just like, follow this recipe. If something happens, call me. It's like,
Right.
You kind of need to understand more than that, because if something happens, it happens pretty quick, depending on what you're working with. Obviously, hydrocarbons and stuff, a lot more exciting than ethanol it can be.
Right. And it's hard to throw all of the fine print in an SOP,
Yeah.
So the SOP is going to say exactly what to do. The SOP doesn't say what to do when you didn't follow the SOP.
Or why. Like,
and then
why is
stuff
this
happened anyway. So, that's where, I can say, vacuum your system and here's why. And then when, someone does it improperly, I can explain, like, people sometimes do it improperly. This is what's improper about it. And like, it's easy to talk about these alternatives and also just like see in someone's face if they're understanding or not. It's really satisfying to communicate an idea to someone else and have them grasp it.
You said vac out my system, and I've shop vaced it 3 times. I don't understand.
Right.
What am I doing wrong?
Exactly.
Right.
You never know what people think.
So
unless you can talk to them.
how has the transition, like you said, you're doing all of your classes on Zoom and stuff, like you still get a little of that body language feedback and kind of you can see in the eyes if they're like glazing over, if they're actually understanding it. But I mean, are you looking forward to getting back to like normal classes, or is this kind of the new norm?
Absolutely. The way that I communicate ideas when I'm teaching on Zoom is very different. I'm really reliant upon like having informative slides and putting a lot of numbers and stuff on the screen. So it is a little bit of, like a standardized sort of experience in that way. Whereas like when you come into my lab, like I'm going to match your experience level right from the start and we can figure out where you're coming from. But I've done webinars where, I had 90 people in there, so I can't see their faces.
Oh, wow.
I can't see what they're experiencing, and so it's just me talking to me
Right.
on my computer.
Right.
So, it's like, I love being able to share the information. And I know for a lot of people, like, even just like my introductory classes, people have loved that because they're just at home and they've got time. But I can't wait to get back to the hands-on classes and, the equipment classes. I think that, especially when it comes to like safety and stuff, like I have a pile of broken parts, and like when someone picks up a broken gauge, like there's just an understanding, like it's just visceral in that way. And so I really would like the world to get back to a point where people can come to my lab again,
So
Yeah, I learned the same way. It's kind of like I have to like feel things and look at things and touch things and like feel how it's broken instead of saying, yeah, that's broken, and just
Right.
looking at it.
Yeah.
I prefer to be the one that breaks them, and then I can say, yes, this is broken,
Yep,
100%.
that's how you learn.
That's
those-
that's how I learned it. That's why
That's how I
For
learned
those of you
to
that don't know, SOP means standard operating procedure, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's usually your recipe book that you'll find hanging up in the lab, hopefully by the MSDS sheets. Sometimes maybe not. So you have a class on August 8th coming up, chromatography via butane, propane, advanced CRC.
Yep.
I don't think a lot of people understand like maybe the difference between extraction and then chromatography. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about
Sure.
that? And then why do people hate CRC so much?
I have a comment on that one.
Yeah, there's so many things to unpack there. So let's start with basic definitions then. So extraction means that we start with one thing and we're going to remove something from it, which means we're going to end with at least two things. So we're starting with the raw material and we're removing something from it. Not all of the thing from it, some of the things from it. And so extraction is generally targeted by compound, especially in most other industries. We're looking at a piece of raw material and getting exactly one thing that we want out of it, or maybe one thing plus a waste product, but it's usually very specific. So, if we're extracting, limonene from orange peels, like we're extracting limonene from orange peels. We're not extracting miscellaneous oils from it. We're targeting one thing at a time. So with cannabis, not generally that targeted. Usually we're just going in for oleoresin in general.
We take what we can
that
get.
falls into that category. Yeah. The sticky stuff and mostly no leaves. Like that's kind of
Right.
As specific as we get with extraction with cannabis. And there's a lot of confusion that is kind of intentional because it's marketing when people talk about their extraction process, because the extraction is just the part where the solvent touches the raw material and then the oil ends up in that solvent and that solvent moves off of the material. So like that's on a closed loop system, that's one column. That's extraction. The whole thing is not an extraction system. That column is an
Is the
extraction
extractor
system,
itself.
Or like on an ethanol system, that would be like the centrifuge is
Right.
extraction, right? And then we have solution. And once we're in solution, purification happens. And purification can mean a lot of things. That can mean filtering sediment, just like plant material back out of it, literal like dirt and clay. Purification can involve temperature change to change the solubility of certain compounds in the solution to remove those. So that would be like your dewaxing, your winterization. And then you also have purification that can be affinity based, meaning, the polarity. And so that would be chromatography, where you're using, and chromatography can happen with the solid phase, with the media, which is where CRC goes. It can also happen with competing liquid solvents. And it just means that instead of separating compounds by their shape and size, we're separating compounds by their polarity, which in simplest terms is by the things that are most similar to them. So like dissolves like, water soluble things go with water, oil soluble things go with oil. If your solvent is butane and propane, you're looking at oil solubles. And so an affinity based purification is going to eliminate water solubles because they prefer the polar media or the polar solvent. And we have all these different types of purification, but they are all about purifying a solution that's already in existence. And even distillation would still be about purifying your solution, even though we do remove most of our solvent from it. It's still unfinished at that point. And so the extraction in the cannabis world has gotten like kind of difficult to explain because people confuse different parts of this process because many times they are a system. They don't work independently of each other, but they are independent processes.
Right.
And
People
so,
are calling an extraction the whole thing when it's really just one part of the entire process.
Exactly. So someone might say, well, I have a really refined extraction process, so I don't have to do any purification. But like if you extract at -40, that's, purification by changing solubility, compared to someone who's extracting at, 10. So like there's all these different factors, and the way people tend to describe their process, it gets pretty convoluted. And that's where CRC can be very messy, because CRC is just the use of powders. If we're describing it, it's, just if I'm using polar solid phase media to filter my process. And I try to promote the use of the term chromatography instead, because chromatography really puts emphasis on the fact that it's an affinity-based filtration method, because you can use clays as a sediment bed filtration just for removing particulate.
Right.
So like heavy metal remediation is technically just like a particulate removal, right? Like they're solids, they're insoluble, they're in our solution, but they're not dissolved.
Right.
And so sediment bed filtration wouldn't remove water solubles. It would just remove things based on their shape and size. So they're too big to get through the clay. Whereas chromatography implies that not only are things probably too big to get through the clay, but also that they have, like a chemical affinity. There's a bond there that's going to prevent that product from making it through the clay, which is a little bit more refined. And if we pay attention to that, we can control it to benefit it.
Now, when I say CRC, I mean I'm just running weed oil through kitty litter here.
Yeah, just whatever. Just powder that you found.
Yeah.
Now, is that CRC, or is that kind of like the clay thing, or is that what CRC is the clay?
So CRC, like the phrase itself means color remediation, either column or cartridge. And so the color remediation part is a misnomer because it implies that color is a thing. Color is an adjective. Like it's like we can't have a color without a compound that is colored, right?
Right.
If light doesn't exist. Well, the light exists, but like it's not being reflected off of nothing, like there's something there that you have to remove. So I can't remove the color red. I can remove compounds that are red.
Are red in nature, right?
Right. And so just remediating color is not a good way to explain it, and it promotes an idea that I think is harmful to consumers. So in the same way that finding out about THC potency sent people down a road of just pursuing THC potency.
Yes.
Right.
I don't want to tell people to avoid color. Some compounds that have color are awful. Avoid them, specifically. But that doesn't mean everything that's yellow is bad, or everything that's orange is bad, or everything that's red is bad. And bad is still subjective based on how you're going to use it. Right. Things that are red might be really important actually when we ingest them. Because
I was going to say, doesn't it affect everyone differently too?
Well, and it just, the method of consumption. So there's things like antioxidants that could actually be protecting our cannabinoids and our terpenes from our stomach acid that are not achieving anything when I catch it on fire and burn it.
Right.
So if my product is supposed to be smoked, I can't justify having them there because they're just going to burn.
Right.
But if my product is intended to be ingested, there might be a significant role for them to play. And so I would want to target my purification based on what compounds I want. Since my extraction is just everything except leaves, then at that point, I've got, 400 compounds maybe, who knows? Which ones do I want and for what application?
Right.
And
I think it started out that way because that's what it was, at least in my experience, that was what it was first used for, was to brighten up slabs and stuff. And then it just kind of, people were like, oh, wow, this can like take out other stuff also. And then it kind of, but they kept that same CRC name, like whoever first started using it.
Right.
It's kind of like a 5-year-old having an explanation to it. It just removes the color of it, but it does, but that's not really what it does.
I took this brown plant and I made it gold.
Right.
Like, cool.
It doesn't explain it well, and I feel like that's unfair. Like, we often treat consumers like they're too stupid to understand the products that we're selling them, and so we give them dumb explanations and we'll be like indica couch instead of
oh my god,
you know, instead of being like THC elevates your blood pressure, and for some people that's stimulating. Like, a normal person can comprehend that, you know. We don't need to dumb it down for them.
Wait, hold on. Whoa. That was the best explanation I have ever heard for weed affecting different people in different ways. Can you please go back and say that again?
Sure. So THC, especially smoking it, because smoking does this as well. Smoking anything increases your blood pressure because you're withholding oxygen. But THC also, generally for most people, is going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to elevate your heart rate. And so for a normal, healthy person, you know, like, that's not going to feel like anything. You know, that's going to feel like a cup of coffee, like you get over it. For someone who's high anxiety, no thank you. For someone who's on blood pressure medication, potentially dangerous.
Really?
You know, so like, there's just all of these variables. And that's outside of it being psychoactive. So now you have to factor in the fact that you are high while experiencing a weird heart rate. You know, and like, how many of us have felt that, you know, where you're like, is my tire flat? You know, like, you start worrying about things that aren't real. Yeah. And it's because it's the combination of that mental experience and that physical experience. There's no way to standardize that for people. And it's so much more fair to say this is not going to be standard and like give them that realistic expectation, you know, and especially with cannabis, I've got dozens and dozens of potentially very active compounds, and I'm only testing for like 3 categories of them.
Right.
And only some of the potential compounds within those categories. And
so there could be tons of stuff in there that you have no idea.
Exactly. And even the things I do know are in there, I'm not quantifying.
And how many of those like COAs do you see up on the internet that are like, and what's this mystery peak? And what's this mystery peak? And people are just like, well, I don't know. It's near this other stuff. So maybe it's this, but nobody like knows for sure.
You know what it is, Matt?
No, I don't.
It is almost dab time, my friend.
Oh, nice. CBT maybe? CBC? They have CBC standards. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So you,
my God.
You
but there's
won.
a lot of debate over methods on some of that stuff because it isn't well studied. And, you know, like, I mean, the more that I learn about cannabis, the less I feel like I know for sure, you know? Like, it's very upsetting to me when I'm making isolated THCA and I finally get all the Delta 9 out. And then there is a peak that isn't THCA. And I'm like, well,
what is it?
You weren't there when the Delta 9 was there. So, you know, and I'm like, it's like, there's just always something, you know, that's like left. And, you know, it could be so many things and we don't pursue that data.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we are going to take a second and go to our ad break and dab break. Just 1 second. We'll be right back, guys.
This episode of The Hot Box is brought to you by Gary's Glass Adventure. Go to garysglassadventure.com and check out his shop for any of your dabbing needs. Gary's Glass has quality German quartz and bangers of all sorts. They come in all sizes, 10, 14, and 18 millimeter. Also available are quality ruby pearls and rigs from a variety of artists. Again, that's garysglassadventure.com. Use promo code R/dabs710 to get 10% off your order. This episode is also brought to you by Sweet Piece of Glass. Spog is an amazing website with lots of great pieces and a large assortment of accessories from artists like Chappelle Glass, Unlimited Glass, and Glassmith, quartz by Jake Miser and J Red Glass. There's almost nothing you can't find from Spog. Matt always takes care of his customers, and if you're in the Discord, he'll often give you a deal. So join the Discord and check out his shop to pick out your very own functional piece of art. He can be found at sweetpieceofglass.com and in the Discord.
So I will mention we have this giveaway we're gonna pick the winner on next week on the next episode. So we just want to mention that again real quick.
That's right.
Got the Sweet Dabber, the J Red, Diamond Knot, all going into this sweet little candy bottle right here. So definitely check out hotboxpodcast.com. There's a post there with all of the things you can do to get entries. And good luck to everyone. And next week we'll announce the winner.
So to get back into it a little bit, before we left for our break, you said the more you learn, the less you know. And just from hearing you talk, I feel like the exact same way. Because I've been explaining it to people that, like, weed affects everybody differently. There's kind of like an average standard, like it'll affect most people this way. And then there's like the deviations on each side where some indicas feel like sativas and sativas feel like indicas. So I almost feel like I've been robbing them, telling them that there is that kind of standard.
Yeah. Well, I did the same thing. I remember being told about indicas and sativas, and like thinking, like feeling so clear on it and feeling like, oh, I finally figured it out. That must be the case. But what you'll find is that if you do smoke a lot of sativas and indicas, you're not going to experience much of a difference between one or the other. What you think you're going to feel is the most influential part of your psychoactive experience because it's psychoactive. It's fake. It's in your brain. It's not a real experience.
The placebo effect.
Yeah, it's being high.
It's like
literally.
everybody that ate acid in the 90s and thought they saw cartoon characters because somebody told them you're going to see
hard
this.
enough, you can trip. Like it's not, it's not outside the realm of possibility. So, in that regard, like we've created that experience by telling people that they're going to have it. But ultimately, what we're finding when we actually test everything is that the biggest influence on the chemical output of these plants is the life experience of the plant. So at the time of harvest, think about it this way, cannabinoids are accumulative, right? So the plant starts producing cannabinoids and then they're there. And then it produces more and more and more. And the ones that it started producing early on didn't go anywhere. They have, there's a potential degradation path.
They change.
That probably has a lot more to do with, the UV and the light, but I don't know. I'm not a plant scientist by any means, but the idea is like those cannabinoids are relatively stable and they're contained, right? They're within that resin structure.
Protected.
And they're accumulative. All of this terpene content, as well as a lot of the other water-soluble content, and then, you've got things like flavonoids and esters, a lot of other category, the antioxidants, things that are going on in this plant, a lot of those are produced on a daily basis. They're constant production by the plant. So terpenes are not accumulative. The plant produces them and then sweats them and they're gone. Most terpenes are toxic to the plants producing them. That's why they're on the outside, right? Because terpenes are a communication device with the outside world. It's not for the plant. It's for you from the plant, for
it's
whatever
for the
reason
bees.
it might be.
So the bees
It's almost like a waste product.
Kind of. Well, because they're either using them, it's basically two reasons. One is to deter pests or deter mold and microbial content. So it's a response to environmental stress. And the other reason they produce them is to attract pollinators. And so they're going to produce those different categories of terpenes at different times in their life cycle based on what's happening to them. So a plant, that smells really green and fresh, a lot of that has to do with the chemicals it's producing while it has soft, supple little branches and soft, delicious leaves that are very attractive to most bugs. And then as that plant gets hardier and covered in resin, that resin actually keeps the bugs away. So it doesn't have to produce those stinky terpenes anymore. Now it starts producing good ones to attract pollinators, which never come, hopefully. And then if it comes under attack from bugs, what's it going to do? Produce those other terpenes. It's got a response. And so, like that is not something that's going to be consistent for a sativa or indica. That's going to be consistent for like, if you always have PN, then you're always going to have this terpene profile because this is what your plant is always going to do. And so a genetic, predisposition to certain terpenes definitely exists, but like the life experience of that plant has a huge impact on, just what's happening. A plant that's capable of being high potency isn't going to, if it's in duress for, its final weeks of resin production. So, like that sativa and indica is not as important as the grower, and the experience that plant has. And then even for that grower to know how to feed plants differently based on what they need, because a blanket feeding, in a blanket environment isn't going to be supportive of individual plant needs. Like the amount of sugar you need versus me is just different. It wouldn't make sense for us to eat the same exact amount of the same exact foods. So, the way that those plants are grown is, probably the number one determining factor in their chemical output.
That's actually insane that you say that you said it's not always like one constant thing, like you're supposed to be feeding your plant this much all the time. It's a variation. And I've actually found that like everybody always told me like your water pH needs to be this right on the dot, and like for forever I kept my pH at like, let's just say 7.
Right.
And then eventually I just kind of let it go, and I realized it started fluctuating a bit, and they thrived even more on the fluctuation than the pure just 7.0.
Right.
It's like they're taking more when out of different areas.
Well, and they have a response to that, right? So like plants are going to grow differently based on if they're well fed all of the time or if they're hungry. Like a nitrogen deficiency isn't gonna, do you any favors, but there is something to be gained by like letting the roots get compacted a little bit before you transplant potentially. Like there are some types of stress on the plant that, are going to help make it stronger.
Because it's natural stress.
Yeah. And so like that's where like I'm not a plant scientist. I can't tell you how to grow the best weed. I only can judge your weed on its chemical output. That's all I've got. And so if you can't grow those chemicals, I can't extract them.
I like that though. You said the stress like helps it grow, because there's even a tack where you break a branch in a certain way. So you stress it out and then let it heal again, and it becomes even stronger. It's like breaking a bone. When you break a bone, it's going to become even stronger where that break was. You're never going to break it again in that same exact spot.
Well,
and that's it takes skill and understanding and experience to like be good at those things. But it also is the exciting part, because that means that like weed will never always be the same unless we do something the same all of the time, and most of us are incapable of that. So
right,
for real. and to bring it back to extractions, like you can have really not great weed, but you can make a decent extract out of it. But if you have like really well grown, really good weed, it makes a better overall extract with fewer refinement steps at least.
Yeah, well that's the number one difference, is the effort that I have to put in.
Right.
And so like if the chemical content isn't there, I can't get it. If the chemical content is there, that doesn't mean I can get it easily.
Right.
And so the ease with which I have access to that chemical content is going to vary in significant ways. And this is something that I'm really excited about being able to test for, because, like we test for potency, and then we test for contaminants, we test for residuals, we test for, pesticides, whatever. But we don't test for the other categories. Like we don't test for esters. We don't test for flavonoids. Most states and labs aren't even testing for water content. Like we're not testing for, like unless it's being demanded, because everyone's just like one more cost. People want to keep the fees down. So anything they can cut off the list, they try. Oregon doesn't test for ethanol at all. So like there's these gaps in our testing, but one that is starting to gain some momentum that I'm excited about is being able to test the lipids. So test all of the waxes, right? Because cannabinoids are lipids too. And so that means that extracting them is inconvenient when there's a large amount of other undesirable waxes in there, because they tend to extract and precipitate in a similar range. That's why it's so important to winterize properly before you distill, because you can distill the waxes right over too. They are too close to each other. And so being able to test your plant for wax content before you extract it would actually tell me if I'm going to get higher yields or not. Because if I have a pound of weed and it's both a truly homogeneous 20% THC, whichever one has more waxes, and specifically the like shitty old watery waxes, that's going to give me low potency, which means that by the time I refine it, I'm going to have a low yield, compared to the other one that might have, it would literally just be fresher material most likely, or no foliar sprays, less heat stress, you know, different humidity conditions in the room, whatever is causing that. And so we're talking about like the thickness of the trichome, you know, like the shell around it. We're talking about like coating on the leaves, like all of these other places where stuff that's also soluble in our concentrate. If I could test for that, it would tell me a lot more about the plant. And that would be really useful to you as a grower, because that would be the difference between one nutrient and another. Mm-hmm. If they're both giving you increased resin content, but one of them gives you lipids everywhere on the leaf and one of them is just giving you strong trichomes, like that'd be a huge advantage for us to test for. And no one's ever talked about it, but now people who are paying a lot for rosin are starting to care, because their yields are trash.
Interesting.
Right.
So unless they can test for this, rosin won't be sustainable. But if they can test for it, they can fix it. And if the rosin heads fix it, I will benefit, because I can already extract the stuff they can't based on doing more cleanup to get it good at the end.
And the less cleanup you have to do means it's cheaper for us.
Right. So if
no
they,
more $100 grams
the charge on this, yeah.
No way.
And what's great about it too is that once we can test for those waxes, we can actually study them, which means we could find out if they're harmful for you. We can find out if they're relevant to use in chapstick or topicals, or if they're helpful as like an inert substance for a gel capsule. You know, like then we can start to actually use products, because we'll know what they are and what they're doing.
Do you actively smoke weed?
I love smoking weed. I'm very picky.
You are the smartest pothead I have ever met. Just like I've just been sitting here like, what? Like I've been understanding it all, but like, holy shit, you know a lot.
I mean, I do teach a lot, so I've gotten pretty good at, trying to talk through it.
You get a lot of questions that you get to then follow down further and know more about. And yeah, that's
well,
cool.
And these are all questions I had too. I just had them slowly, over 10 years in the industry. And so like I have been wrong and repeated incorrect things.
We all have, I'm sure.
Oh,
all of us.
I've never been wrong in my life.
It sucks. We just don't know until we find out. And so, that's where I have even more hesitation than before, because now if I haven't proved it with like a witness in my lab and 2 third-party COAs, it might be fake. Like I can't trust anything anymore.
Goddamn movie magic.
So we have a lot of younger people that come and they find the subreddit through Googling stuff, and a lot of people like in states that are non-legal. And I see a lot of questions about like kids that are in college now, like what they're studying and what they should be studying as far as getting into the weed industry. I always tell them like definitely learn to drive a forklift, because it's going to be a lot of that.
Yep.
But like from the
today, yeah.
Right, they thought I was joking. I had this in the rundown, like, hey, do you think it's important to know how to drive a forklift in the weed industry? And like for real, it is. It's a real thing.
Not only in the weed industry, but I have worked in the aerospace industry, to a foundry, to carpentry, pretty much 90% of the jobs I have worked at, there has been a forklift.
It's life
and
skill.
knowing how to drive it makes life easy for you because you just sit your ass down and get in and move some levers.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy who has to help the forklift driver because he's not allowed to drive the forklift.
You're just sitting there like,
terrible job.
Yep. You're doing good. Yeah, just 1 second. I'll move in a little bit more.
Yeah,
right.
You have to walk in the parking lot next to the curb instead of sitting under the, it's not.
You can't ride on it because that's against safety rules.
Yeah.
But like, as far as like a science pursuit, like what would you recommend that these kids start to pursue as far as like classes and majors and stuff?
I mean, if you want to work in the extraction industry, like, and actually doing production work, like making hash, I would honestly really strongly recommend engineering, because, we are definitely moving towards GMP, good manufacturing procedures. And like it's going to be very process driven, very systems oriented, and it's going to be pretty standardized in our near future, especially in the more global markets, like the hemp industry, and and even in the pharmaceutical world, that engineering expertise, I think, is a huge advantage over a classroom full of chemistry graduates. If you want to work in the analytical or research and development field, pursue the chemistry. And I would definitely recommend pursuing not just the organic chemistry and the analytical chemistry that will help you understand the testing procedures. You're going to have to, study a lot of statistics if you want to work in that field. It's a tremendous amount of math. But those are the types of jobs where it would be like formulation, where you would be the one inventing the recipe for the tincture. If you want to be the one that follows the recipe for the tincture, but maybe, has a good job in that field where you're designing equipment to enable someone to follow the recipe for that tincture, that's kind of a mechanical and engineering, or even a chemical engineering type of role. So you got to kind of think about like what you would want to do. Like, do you want to be hands-on with oil and with equipment? Do you want to work with a wrench every day, or do you want to work with a pipette? Can you handle, like, are you going to be comfortable in a respirator 8 hours a day? Because if you want to work in extraction, handling dry biomass, that's not like a cute lab coat and like fun, and like your favorite pen. That is a dirty physical labor job.
It's the worst. Yeah. It's literally the worst.
So you've got to think about like what you really want to do, at the end of the day, because you're probably going to have to do, difficult random jobs, to work towards those goals at some point. But in terms of like your education, like think about, where you want to be at the end of that road. If you have any ideas in your mind about being a business owner in the cannabis industry, even if that's a lab owner or an extraction company owner or a garden owner, take business classes, like literally any business classes. Like sign up for online community college business classes. They're probably going to get really cheap over this next year because everyone's going to be needing enrollment. But the more you understand about like the differences between an S Corp and an LLC, the more you understand about like things you can get sued for when you have employees or not, not to mention just like how to write a business plan and do all of that, like the more likely you will be to succeed. A lot of cannabis jobs are still just regular jobs. Like the cannabis part just makes it more expensive and less profitable, I think.
And here, your paycheck is cash. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Cool.
So like, and the cannabis information is evolving. Like if you came to me today and downloaded everything I know about cannabis right now, you would be behind in 2 days because I'm going to find out something in the next 2 days that I didn't know now. And it might be really important, like it's in flux. So you don't need to know any of the things that I knew for the first 5 years of my career because those things are all garbage now, like they're not important anymore. And, so the future of what's going to happen. Like if you're not going to graduate college for, 4 more years, we might not smoke weed in 4 years, and I have no idea what's going to happen. Like before vape pens became standardized, if you would have told me that people were going to be carrying around oil and smoking it out of pen, I would have been like, nerds. Right. Even when vape pens were getting popular, I was like, this is too expensive. There's no way that people are going to keep doing this, because I remember when the pen battery was like $300, $400. And I thought, there's no way this will catch on.
Right.
And remember when I said I've been wrong a lot? Yeah, like I've been wrong so many times. So I don't think it's important to know everything that's happening in cannabis now. I think it's important to know how to work in the field where you want to be in cannabis, and then have the business skills and the negotiation skills to get that when you're ready for it. I know a lot of really smart chemists that can't negotiate in a job interview, and that's how you get taken advantage of in the cannabis industry. So, some of these life skills, I think, are just as important.
I know some engineers that can't negotiate their way out of a blueprint. So,
right,
yeah. A lot of people too that will just be happy to even get an offer. You know what I mean? So they're just like, $5 an hour, yeah, sure.
I'll pack weed socks all day with no mask for $5 an hour. Cool.
Right. I mean, I know that's an insanely low number, but I'm just throwing out something. You know what I mean?
No, it's not even untrue, because here's the thing. It's not uncommon in other industries to work for free to get in.
Interns.
Like internships are a normal, gatekeeper for a lot of industry.
I can't tell you how many times I've offered that.
Yeah. So $5 an hour
I just want knowledge.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's totally fair, but you've got to know how to then take that internship and use it to negotiate a job offer. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You've got to, a lot of people just want the weed and then work until they don't even want the weed anymore. They just get burnt out on it. And that sucks. Not to mention, we need competent people in cannabis. If everyone who's getting paid cash knew more about how to manage their taxes, that would be really valuable for them. But no one told them that they are going to have a much harder time filing each year when they have to deal with piles of money from 8 different temp jobs.
So nobody expected to have to pay taxes on this shit. Fuck out of here.
No. And you got to learn how to do it right, or you're going to pay too much.
Oh, for real.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
And they won't give you shit back.
No. Yeah. It's, that's the part that we still all have to catch up on. And I think the West Coast is, probably struggled with it the most, because California took so long to get to legalization, and then their legalization was so bad that it didn't turn over.
It went really bad.
Yeah, everyone kind of has just accepted it in Colorado. We're kind of just like, this is where we make our money now. This is what we do. But we don't have some of the same obstacles that California does. A lot of people out there, they just haven't ever adapted this to normal day-to-day life. And if we don't do it, the corporate versions of us will, because they know how. That, how embarrassing for our jobs to be taken from us because we don't know how to do taxes.
By people that don't even smoke weed, don't even care about it. It's just another commodity.
Well, that's the thing. It's it won't matter that they don't smoke weed. It won't matter that they don't care, because we didn't bother to do the business part.
Right.
Cannabis is cool, but if you want a cannabis business, there's 2 words there. And you can't just only focus on the first one. And if you are only going to focus on cannabis, you better make enough money to pay someone else.
Yep.
And see, I think
on the business.
I think this is where legalization becomes the biggest issues, because once this becomes federally legal, we don't have to worry about, we might have to worry about the stigma, but at least not breaking the law at some point in time to have to do this. Because federally speaking, we were all kind of still breaking the law. A little bit.
Right. Yep.
Which is kind of terrifying sometimes.
No, and it's something that we just kind of don't, I can't think about it. Right now, if a federal agent came into this facility, he's obligated by his badge to like,
Right.
you know, like he can't ignore this, right? Like,
Right,
everything,
right.
You know, like I'm illegal right now. Don't tell anyone. But, you know, but like I can't think about that all day.
Right.
What am I
right.
going to do? Be stressed out all of the time? So like we have to, you know, function. And
We just keep the doors locked. I'm not federally
Yeah.
obligated to let you
Right.
in, so good day, sir.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but
right.
like,
right.
but like that comfort
Yeah.
doesn't make it any better. Like if
Right.
I could just, you know, like channel that angst into like caring about banking, you know, and getting like, and not having cash anywhere, like things would be safer and easier for us. But it's really hard for the people who are in the industry to be noisy about that, because I can't say these cannabis businesses have to drive around with $100,000 in cash, because I don't need anyone to hear me saying
Right.
people drive, you know what I mean? Like I can't call attention to myself and put myself at risk, so I can't call attention to serious issues.
Right.
And so then like none of us really put in the work.
We all just kind of glossed over that part because it's like,
yeah,
well,
we just don't talk about it
Yeah.
because we can't.
Because nobody
And-
wants to get the shit stolen.
Right. Yeah. Like so it's a really, it's a, you know, a really hard situation for us to be in. It only really gets resolved through legalization. And if we're not prepared to step up to the rest of the obligations that will come with legalization, then
Right.
we won't be the ones that get to do it, you know?
Right. Right. That is the biggest thing. Like you said, the obligate. We need to take responsibility for it while legalizing. We can't just go fucking legalize it and then be done with the issue. It's not that simple.
Right. Like I hear people say the words, or the letters, I should say, GMP all of the time. I have never once been into a GMP cannabis facility or hemp facility. There's a lot of people who say they have them. I've physically never been in one that would actually qualify as GMP. A lot of people have a lot of binders.
have them or are in the process of making them.
Yeah, well, and even though it's like you can have the binders, but then you still have like, you know, all of these, you know, components that won't need any of those. You know, like you're still not OSHA compliant because you're over here standing on buckets.
Buckets
you know?
on
like
the
there's
floor
still
and
all of these, yeah. So like,
You've been to my lab.
none of us, like, you know, I mean, I'm sure someone, you know, maybe you'll get an angry email from someone that says, yeah, and if that's the case, like, let's go.
It's going to be the clear scientist, and the clear scientist is going to be like, bro, come to North Carolina, check out my giant fucking facility.
I don't know. Does he do a mycotoxin test on the corners of his piping? Like, let's find out.
I don't know.
Like,
there's a lot of
raw material.
It's a lot of piping.
It's that's what I'm saying.
You know, and it kind of, I'm new into kind of growing for myself. I'm my own caregiver and a few other patients that I have. But kind of getting into it, like that was kind of one of the most disheartening things. Is I tried to do like everything completely right and keep everything as clean as possible, and everybody else was just like, "I don't worry about that shit." And it's like, what? But mold, like, you know,
Cross contamination is the #1 contamination, and it's stupid because it's the only preventable contamination. You know, like everything else kind of is a part of the process, so we have to mitigate it. But like cross contamination is truly just us ruining it.
keeping a clean room is a lot harder than it sounds.
It's extremely difficult, and I'm not like criticizing other people when I say that no one's GMP. Like I have cracks in my cement floors right here next to me. You know, like I get it. You know,
I don't see dabs all over your walls though, so you're doing good. That's nice.
Here's the thing: if we got dabs on the walls, we would wipe it off immediately. So
Damn.
you would never know.
You need to come down here and tell some
If you
people
get dabs
that
on the
shit.
walls, let me know. I'll come take care of it. It'll be gone.
It's you know, it's a difficult thing to do, and it's difficult to do in transition for our industry because, you know, like there's people who are operating at pilot plant scale right now, but that's about as sophisticated as it gets. And even, you know, those people aren't being fed by other pilot plants. It's still all kind of vertical. So everyone's kind of picking and choosing the parts of their process that are the most clean, you know, and of course, what else can you do? Like the cleanest room in our facility is the packaging room. I don't go in there. I don't even open that door because I don't want to be responsible for it, you know, but so like we're putting all of our energy into the final location for final product because it's the best investment, you know, of that effort. Because, you know, like if I bring a steel tank from outside into my lab. Like, you know, I've got mud, I've got shoes, I've got, you know, all of these different things. So it's hard to, you know, it's hard to criticize everyone. Like, I'm definitely a part of it, but we all need to be really honest about.
Just because it's happening doesn't mean we don't need to be conscious about it, at least as much as possible.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean, because for most of us to be truly GMP compliant, I shouldn't say most, but for very many people, it means that they can't operate in the facility they're in. It means that they would have to start from scratch, and they would have to build a new facility that is capable of meeting those requirements. You know, like, you can't just add floor drains at a reasonable cost to certain buildings. You know what I mean? Like,
a lot of that stuff needs to be done from the ground
fire
up.
suppression when you've been like running your lab on a second story of a grow.
Oh,
like,
people will try
things
though.
are not, you know, they're just not economical. I mean, I shouldn't say you can't, but like for the $300,000, I would build a new building. You know, so for a lot of people, it means a change that's unsustainable for their current business. It would mean buying completely new equipment, not upgrading what they have. And most of us have not, you know, established the infrastructure to be able to source income or have a capital of our own. And so it's easier to fight it, you know, and keep making money. But I think that it is like anyone else that's going to compete with us in terms of like coming in at that national level, they will just build it properly with no expenses spared the first time. And they might not love cannabis as much, and they might make worse hash than you, and it won't matter if you're not allowed to make it at all.
Yeah, right. So I heard
we just got to trap again, and then you still won't be clean.
Right. Keep a clean trap.
Yeah.
I heard you guys, your team, you guys won a cup with some CRC, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that the person that put that cup on was a real CRC hater, but you guys like won the cup. Can you like tell us about that a little bit?
The ultimate fuck you.
That's a fun story. So I went to Barcelona right before, well, I guess coronavirus was happening, but I went to Barcelona anyway. And I was going to teach a class out there and just enjoy Spain. And it was the Ego Clash, which is one of my favorite competition styles. But I didn't know what style of competition it was before I entered it. So the way that this competition works is that everyone who enters smokes everyone else's entries right then.
Nice.
That day.
Huh.
And we all judge them. And it's, you know, a private, I have my little tablet and I write my little notes on it. And we judge on all of these different categories, but we all smoke each other's hash in front of each other. They're not labeled, so, you know, you don't necessarily know who made what.
They all know, yeah.
Well, that makes it more civil, at least.
Well, it's no, so that was my favorite thing about it, is I knew which jar was mine, of course. I could look at it and tell. And so I got to listen to all of these people as they smoked it and like hear them talk about it, and even just watching them dab it, you know, and like seeing how they experience it, which was fascinating for me, and like I loved it. It was a lot of smoking weed for me because I was already smoking weed that whole day earlier. I didn't know that I was going to have to do that. But yeah, so Third Gen puts it on, you know, Third Gen Family Farms, and he's real adamant about just honestly anything that isn't, you know, this organic grown, you know, water extracted and rosin. Like they support that whole, you know, very
one of the
small batch
hardcores
artisan, you know, products, and like have no issue with any of those products. I think they're amazing, and like really well made hash contains categories of compounds that I don't get in my live resin because I'm intentionally excluding water solubles. And some of those water solubles, when preserved and never heated, are great. You know, they taste fine. I don't know that they have any like other relevant value, but if we're just, you know, talking about that experience, like that's why we get some really intense fruity flavor out of like a lot of water hash, is because some of those are like esters and things that I'm not, you know, like terpenes is just one category that contributes to flavor, and it's the most astringent category. Like terpenes on their own are pretty harsh. A lot of these esters, things like banana, like that's just its own little chemical compound. That's not a terpene. There's no combination of terpenes that makes banana flavor. That's an ester. It's all on its own. So like a lot of these water hash, they have great value. I have no issue with them. And it's funny because people who specialize in solvent tend to not necessarily hate on these other products. It's easy to hate on poorly made rosin because it looks like a booger, but other than that, like
you mean polishing a piece of poop?
Yeah, like we respect the craft of each other, but Third Gen definitely had posted a lot of videos about just hating CRC and how it was garbage, and and of course most people, especially people in that kind of area of the community, they're experiencing CRC from the bulk pack perspective. They're not experiencing it from a gram at a time at the dispensary. And so I would say that in general, like sauce that's available to you by the multiple pound is not as good as sauce that you can only get
by the gram,
an ounce of at most at a time. Like a lot of times what we make in bulk is not as good. And that's because most of the weed in bulk is not as good. And that's something the Third Gen knows, because he talks about that all the time too, that like it's all about the grower. It is 100% about the grower.
Yep.
And so like I can only make clean isolate from bad material, and I can make clean isolate and I feel great about it, but we're limited in that function. And
you
so
still
he's
need
talked
those
a lot
terps.
about it. He's complained about these these CR seed slabs and these like generic bulk products that aren't good. Now here's the thing to keep in mind: those slabs were terrible before they were CRC, right? Like we're
like
talking
just
about,
the worst.
We're talking about brown, spicy, stinky bullshit.
Oh no.
So like it would not have been better to sell it to someone as it was. And if that CRC process made it more potent in the process of removing that color, which it should,
Mm-hmm.
Right, you're just concentrating it.
Yeah, then they did increase the actual value of that product. Fundamentally, if I'm paying for milligrams of cannabinoids and the brown stuff was 60 and the light yellow stuff is 80, that's a positive. That's 20 milligrams more.
You're not paying for the bullshit.
Yeah, like it's valuable. So like I don't see any ethical issue with that. The ethical issue is with the misunderstanding that the color impacts the potency, which it does not necessarily. I can still have 80% potency and red,
right.
80, like if I fill a little bit of chlorophyll into my 99% pure white powder, it's all going to be green goo, so like color doesn't indicate potency in that way, especially because a lot of, these color compounds don't represent a lot of mass.
Right.
Like if I remove 100% of the anthocyanins from, a gram of cannabis, that is like a decimal point that's not going to add up to anything, like it's not going to change the scale necessarily.
You're probably still going to have a gram.
Yeah, like damn near. So, there's a lot of other things we remove in the process of CRC that do affect that weight. Removing water is a big one. But fundamentally, I think it does purify it. A lot of people just see the color change, and without an explanation of that potency change, and without proof that that potency change has occurred, because you can't be claiming things that you can't prove, then it's easy for people to just see it as a bad move. But like if you increase your potency by 20%, you did increase the value of that product, and I don't see any problem with that. And that's all I see in my live resin is I'm going to make it as good as I possibly can, and I think it's better for the effort that I make.
I mean, if you pull things out that aren't supposed to be there, like if you want THC and you pull things out that aren't THC, by nature you would be concentrating it, right? You'd be increasing that percentage. You would have to be.
Sure.
That's how you would get 100% of it. You'd have to take out everything but that.
Right. But then we have this RSO logic of like the whole plant or the broad spectrum or the full spectrum. But like, give me the list. How many things
give me the list
to be full spectrum?
What do you want in these
like if
guys?
you tell me how much of each cannabinoid needs to be there for it to be full spectrum, okay, I'll do it. But like, if you can't give me that list, then you can't critique that list. You know, if you can't tell me, like if you want to say that the esters in, you know, the solventless extract are what make it better, then you need to be able to quantify your esters and prove that you have more than me. I believe that you probably do, but you still have to prove it.
Right.
You know, like
you can't
still
just
need to
say it.
demonstrate
Yeah.
that.
At the
And
same
so,
time, you have to prove they're useful too, right?
I mean, potentially. So useful from the perspective of smells good, tastes good is like I can
that's
just
all
say it.
subjective though, right?
So,
Yeah.
But if I can prove it's there, then there we go. You know, it's kind of like, you know, like adding peaches to, you know, like a craft beer at the end. Like it might not really taste like peaches at the end of it, but like if you feel like
it is
it
a
does,
peach craft beer.
great, you know. Yeah. So, you know, like it's all you know, there's a lot of subjective things that in that, you know, connoisseur market are important. Like that's how we choose one wine versus another, is like this oak barrel versus this oak barrel, you know. So
I've aged this crude 10 years in this
there's-
oak barrel.
So there's relevance to nuance.
Sure.
You know, there's relevance to opinion, but that's where it is an opinion. And so I was in Barcelona and I wasn't there to compete in any of the competitions. I was just there, you know, to hang out and teach. And so I had to submit some personal to the competition because I found out, I didn't realize the Ego Clash and Third Gen, you know, were a combination, but I had found out that several of the other Ego Clashes that had gone down in California were also won by CRC products. And so I just had to do it. So, you know, even in the court of opinion, we still determined that, you know, at least of the solvent extracted products, it won. And, you know, second place was a CRC product as well. So, you know, that was Kind Selections up in Canada, and it was incredible.
Nice.
Their stuff was amazing. I thought I was going to lose to them the whole time. So
I feel like
I think
most
it kind of circles full back to what you were saying originally, is like kind of like the extraction is not the entire process, it's just a part of the process.
Right.
CRC is like should be a part of the process as well, or it can be, and it has nothing wrong with it at all it is increasing your potency.
Right. And a lot of people want to argue for one method over another, but like, you know, there's a lot of reasons why we would choose one method over another. So I can't say that it's right. Like I can't say that extracting with cold ethanol is better than winterizing in, you know, a big, large batch reactor, because like the reason that you would choose one versus another might be based on, you know, that your outdoor storage tanks are in the desert and it's never going to be okay for you to try and keep that cold because it's 109 degrees outside. So maybe
whatever's feasible.
Batch winterization is what makes sense for you. I honestly don't care which, you know, option you choose. What I care about is if there's no waxes in your product at the end. And so like, if you're achieving the same goal, then it just comes down to like what's cost effective for you, what's possible for you. And, you know, it's silly for us to all try to be better than each other when we're not comparing the things that make it better. Like no one is putting out there their cost of production per pound, but everyone will argue with you about why their lights are better. Prove that your lights are better. Why are they better? Because if it's not affecting your overhead, then you've got the different parameters than me, you know.
What's
like
the point, right?
You know, like you have to give me data. You know, if you can prove that you have more resin content per pound, that's 1 point. If you can prove that you have more resin content per pound and it costs you 20% more than me to operate, then I might be able to just grow more than you to make up the 20%. You know, like there's all these different factors. And no one wants to compare everything. They all want to pick a weird angle.
They pick the thing they're good at, right? They pick like, this is my ahead in the game, and so that's the thing I focus on because it's all I fucking have.
It takes 2 points to make a line, so like you can't just pick one part of the process and then like tell me where it's gonna go. You don't. It's not enough information, and it's a funny argument because it's one that, you know, again, if we get replaced by, you know, larger corporations, like they are only thinking about that other half. So they'll be able to figure out the front part because we're giving them that. That's the only part we're worrying about. And so like they'll have all of that data. to take from us, and we need to learn the other portion about cost efficiency and process control, and it's
right, which they're fucking masters of.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like if you want to know how much it costs per Cheerio to make a Cheerio,
They know that
You
shit.
ask them, they fucking know.
Yeah, they know. Like, there's probably a guy at each plant that
For
knows
real.
what his Cheerios cost, and he's probably hating on Milwaukee for having more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Your
they
Cheerios are mids, Milwaukee. It's all mids.
know. Exactly. Like, these are the factors that like they will happen to us at scale, and people.
That's funny.
Like I love making some homemade hash for myself, but the industry is just bigger than that. We have to compromise, or we have to choose where we want to be. I know
Right.
that R&D is where I'll be happiest. Like I would love building a plant and setting it up, and then going back every 3 months to say hi. Like I don't
For
want to be
real.
the one showing up every day.
Oh, that's
Running
the
that
fun.
job,
That's the fun stuff. That's what those
know,
of
that's
us
not for
that
me,
didn't go
you know?
to school get to do.
Yeah. And it's not even
Hey.
it's just like I know where I want to be in this industry, and so I'm going to kind of choose that. That's a privilege that I've afforded myself after doing a lot of bad jobs for a long time. But I think a lot of people who want to get into this industry, like they don't think about where they want to work. Or
They don't
think
know.
what
They
that
just
looks
know
like.
that weed. Like, I want to work in
Right.
the weed industry because it's got to be this glamorous thing, and weed is amazing. And
Well, and if Vice comes and films me, you're gonna think that my job is just like opening jars,
Right.
and being like, like it's
Pipetting.
gonna make it look like I don't do anything difficult. It's not gonna look like every 15 minutes I have to run and fill a bucket of dry ice,
Right.
And then sometimes every 30 minutes I didn't go the 15 minutes before, and so now I gotta get like 3 buckets of dry ice, and now I'm gonna go to lunch
Right.
late. Like it doesn't show you. Just like the day-to-day headache.
so your chillers are down too, huh?
No, it's just enough. They weren't enough. So I have chillers and the dry
For
ice,
real.
So, there's no end to bucket tech. You will always need a
Bucket Tech's sweet.
Yeah.
Bucket's the best tool there is.
So,
Yeah, it's endless.
can people find your extracts in stores? Like, if they are you're in Colorado?
I'm in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So Sano Gardens is the lab here. We just do fresh frozen, live resin, and then we have our zirconia product line, which is just all isolates. The idea behind that line is to make isolated cannabinoids really cheap. So we don't make cheap shatter, we don't make cheap wax. I just purify that, and you can buy isolated compounds at those same prices. And that's all available medical and rec in Colorado. We're here in Lake Commerce City, and so Crystal Leaves is our neighbor right next door, and they have the best prices on our products. They've always got it in stock. You can also go to our website and check out the full list of who carries our products there. And I would love for everyone to check them out if you can.
it's super tasty.
We will be sure to put that in the show notes and the YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I have to say I've
Garden.com.
I've been able to try some of it, and I've had a lot of different dabs from like a lot of different places and people, and that shit is very, very good.
Thank you. It's, we have a lot of credit to, give to the people we
growers,
source from. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can only do so much. But I really love our product because I do feel like I can dab a lot of it, and it's clean, and it doesn't give me that tickle. Part of that's because I formulate it, so I control the terpene ratio and the cannabinoid ratio. So, there's some influence.
People
there,
don't
but-
really understand that those can be very like irritating at higher levels, and when they like
Yeah.
get this gram of sauce that's like just terps and then like a little diamond or whatever in it, and they're like,
Right.
oh yeah, and then the next morning they're like, shit's all swollen up.
I've done and I've seen people dab like just the terps.
Straight
you know?
oh
Right.
Not
cringe.
the time. It's
not
not
good.
pleasant.
No.
So yeah, I try to keep that in a manageable range.
Yeah.
But it does fluctuate, because if we find out there's another compound that I want in there, I'm gonna go back and get it. So
I'm going to go back and get it.
Hell yeah. And are you doing work with Trichome Institute? Are you doing classes like with them? What do you? I interviewed Max a long time ago when we were doing this
Sure.
podcast, and that was interesting that I saw that Trichome Institute pop up in your feed.
Yeah, so Trichome Institute has been doing like teaching for a long time. especially Max, like that's his whole thing. Like,
Yeah, the interpreters and all that.
Yeah, if you want to sit down and nerd out on weed, like Max can suck 14 hours out of your day, no problem. Like you'll just be going, you know. Like and I love cacti, and he has an incredible like cacti thing going on, and I'm just like I could talk about that forever. But they also recently really got into the online education. Actually, before the COVID crisis, but just trying to standardize a lot of this information, in part because the global market is developing. And one thing that has not existed well for cannabis is kind of a universal language about how we describe things and how we define things. Which is problematic because we change our minds about what things mean and what they are.
Yeah, that's huge for all the bud tenders, like giving out all of this information that who knows where it comes from. Like it's good to have a standardized set of...
And so the classes that they started with were really about that interpening, which is a really cool concept because the idea is to teach you how to evaluate cannabis as a product without the analytical hard data. So it's a really interesting contrast to what I do, because on my end, like in the lab, you don't test anything by smelling it. That's not how we figure out what things are. But interpening is all about that. And so, but that's hard to do digitally, So they've really gotten a good team together to put together digital classes that are very interactive, very data focused, a lot of like links to further reading and reliant upon studies, so that there's just kind of a couple of angles for you to kind of grasp these different concepts about how to identify different qualities of your cannabis, from things to like moisture content, resin content, the aromatic profiles, those kinds of factors. And so I got involved with them to contribute to their cannabis consultants course, which is, an entry level kind of course. This would be for like your accountant for your business who like doesn't know anything about weed and would love to learn something about weed.
Right.
It would be helpful if she knew what a rotary evaporator is, because she keeps seeing it on your itemized, list or something. You know what I mean?
You guys go through a lot of rotary evaporators here.
Yeah, or like someone who wants to be a bud tender, but it's not legal in their state yet. But like they want to, they've met a bud tender, listened to him talk, and they think, I want to know what this person knows. Like it's that kind of everything class. And so they cover the grow, they cover how to read a lab test, how to understand a certificate of analysis. And then I cover a whole bunch of different just types of extracts, what they are, what they're made of, how to take a dab, just kind of the basics. And so that's the Cannabis Consultant Training, CCT. And it's just like a good overview for everyone. If you don't know anything technical about cannabis, or if you want to, have some evidence of your technical knowledge, because there's tests and quizzes and you do get a certificate at the end of it. And then I also filmed an introduction to concentrates that's a separate class from that, a little bit longer. And that just kind of goes into a little bit more detail about each of the extraction processes, and specifically how to perform, some of these tasks. And to like, if you have that, say you've already got an analytical chemistry background, and when you get on Instagram, you see the words that people are using to describe their shatter, and you feel like you don't know what's going on, take my introduction class, because I'll help you bridge the gap between, the organic chemistry terms and the cannabis industry terms, and kind of what these different products are. And to break it down in a way that helps you understand that like shatter and wax can both be 80% potency, and just some of the like the nuance that when you're in the industry all the time, you forget that
like
other people don't
mids
know.
Versus boof. What's the difference?
Exactly. Yeah.
Take our class and find out.
Mids versus Booth 101.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny.
It's
Hell yeah.
I mean, that's my favorite thing about teaching, is figuring out, where everyone else is coming from on these topics. And, we're spoiled, you guys.
For real.
Like, you got your fancy glass. There's people out there who still think that are like still taking dabs on like tinfoil apparatuses.
Yeah.
So
Silicon dabs.
we live a sweet life, you know.
Yeah. Especially like people in non-legal states. We always kind of forget
Right.
about them. Like they're still like going to jail over this shit. So it's definitely
Right.
we see
Yeah.
a big spread of that on the dab subreddit and then here in the Discord chat. So it's always good when we can help steer somebody in a better path than what they were trying to do.
Right.
What we call a medical apparatus will get you
Yeah.
quite a few days in jail.
Yeah, it's called paraphernalia, and you're coming with me downtown. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much for your time. I definitely appreciate you staying the whole hour with us and like talking about all this cool weed science stuff. It's
Yeah, this was
awesome.
amazing.
For sure.
And we'll have links
Yeah.
in the show notes to all of your like your Instagram and then the Eventbrite and the class that people can check out
Right.
if they're actually doing some extractions. I think most of the people in this chat are just avid users,
Smokers.
smokers.
Right.
We have a couple of extractors and whatnot, but
Yeah,
most
yeah.
of you all are smokers.
Those of us that didn't get relegated to the hemp toils the rest of their lives.
Right. Well, you know, don't lose faith because hemp will probably be first in position for legalization compared
Yeah.
to some of these state-run labs. So
Yeah.
you might get to play with THC one day.
Back
Right?
again one day. Hell yeah. Hotbox.earth, that's the website. Check it out. I'll give you guys a reminder one more time. We got the giveaway coming up next weekend, so check out the post, and it's in the announcements channel. You can check out all the different ways to get in on this sweet glass for free shipping.
Are they going to get one more entry for coming next week?
I don't know. That's up to Tooth because he has to do that on the fly and then find the winner. So it's up to him. If he wants to deal with that, cool. If not, you just get the entry for today and from last episode.
So that's up in the air. We'll see.
Yeah, it's up to how he feels, man. You know, if you guys are nice to him, maybe buy him some cookies, perhaps a pizza sent to his house. You know, he may.
I don't know. I don't know if we can accept bribes. Is it time for the disclaimer already?
No, all right.
The opinions of those expressed in this Discord are not those of the entirety.
We made it the whole show before you had to do that, though. That's good. We're getting better.
It was a pretty good show.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. And make sure you subscribe to iTunes, YouTube, and send us screenshots for your subscriptions if you want to get those added for the giveaway. And yeah, thanks
Send them
again,
over to me,
Murray.
Matt.
It's been totally awesome.
Hang down in the smoke lounge if you guys want to dab with us after. See you later.